So starting to get the lath put on, and I decided I'm going to go ahead and put the lath on, and that'll kind of give me an idea of where I need to put my steel frame like this with the rebar that'll go along here to hold the can wall. And the can wall, of course, will just be a triangle there, a triangle there, and a triangle down there. Obviously it's going to be overlaid with lath, and then the edge of it will taper down like that, and then I'll be able to pile dirt behind it. Okay, so now I decided to go ahead and put the lath on first rather than try to build that and then figure out, does the lath fit, is it the right distance and all that. My tire bales are set back a little bit that way from this wall, so there's about 4 inches here that this goes back before the tire bale edge starts. So if I draw a line from the tire bale edge, it hits, you know, a little bit back here like this. I was going to try to bend this around and then form it to the tire bales, but then it's going to be all irregular shaped, which is okay. I mean, I'm not super worried about looks. It just needs to be functional and look halfway decent. But I decided I'm going to go ahead and have the lath go straight over. We're going to fill the gap with this riprap, with this leftover concrete from one of my buddy's projects. What this will do is this will give me a backing. It'll give me a backing for when I spread cement over this. So what this will do is it'll give me a backing for my cement, so I won't just have cement falling through here and just pouring into the back there. Also, if you're doing this, you need to remember that the weight of this pushes the lath out. So I've tightened it down here with a couple screws already, which has kind of pulled it in some. So it kind of goes this way, and then it kind of tapers toward the tire bales a little bit. And that's okay. I'd rather have it doing that than bulging out, because I can always loosen these screws later to get it to kind of sit out a little bit further and relax. So that, and then just kind of pound it, and that kind of helps the rocks all settle. And then that'll be a nice backing there for my cement plaster. Good. Yeah, and obviously this is not for thermal mass like it was inside the greenhouse, although that's going to be a contributor to keeping this dirt mass warm, or the tire bales warm, but really this is just to back up the plaster. Well, the wind finally quit blowing for a few seconds here. I'm going to try to make this quick. Metal lath all screwed here, comes out here. This is going to be the angle of my top of the edge. So I've drilled some rebar into here, and if you watch my videos on the bond beam, you know how that works. I just cut these at a 45-degree angle, little lengths of rebar like that. Now here comes the wind again. And then chuck this end in the 1/2-inch drill right here, and just clamp it down in the 1/2-inch drill, and then drill them into the tire, you know, about 3, 4, 5 inches, and then they're pretty solid. So it's a good way to anchor into tires. We've done that here. Here I can just bend them over so that they match up so they stay in line, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, good. And this should be thick enough that I can put my cans pretty close to this lath right here, or maybe even right up against them. Good. All right, that was, I don't know if it's about 3:30, I guess. So it's about 6 hours of work with all this. It's going and getting tools. Forgot this tool, forgot that tool, didn't have this drill bit, didn't have that screw, didn't have enough washers, blah, blah, blah. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Put the welder away, get the welder back out, bring it out here, drag the generator here, put it away, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so bottom line is I did weld it, and I'm happy that I did, because I'm not going to have to rely on just the strength of the can wall to hold this up. This is solid. I mean, I can haul on this and it's just not moving. I got to cut that off so it's not an impalement risk. And then that one too. And then I'm going to wipe this down with phosphoric acid, and I might even leave it at that, but I might spray paint it too, just to make sure that this doesn't corrode. The wire lath, the metal lath, you know, goes on real easy, but putting it against tire bales, even though these are covered in plastic, is still a pain in the butt. This is a pain, And then when we're spreading, you can see I got a hole back here, I've got a hole here, I got a hole back here. And you know, there's a big hole there. I got to figure out how to fill these, because when you're spreading cement plaster over it, it just falls through. I mean, some of it falls through, not all of it, but some of it does fall through. So I'm going to try to figure out if I'm going to put riprap back there and try to fill that in, and then talk about building a can wall. Now I'm going to go ahead and build a can wall on this back side. I'm going to use this metal lath for a guide, kind of, for the cans. Obviously this is it's tire bale wall. That's how it's going to look. I'm expecting that, just like the inside. So, but what I did to try to reinforce this here at the top was just use little pieces of rebar. Obviously some were a little too long, but just wired them in, bent these in the vise, hammered them over in the vise, and then just welded them on. Several of those, sun's in the way, all the way up to the top there. These bolts are in the wood. I ran them in with the impact hammer. These are just going to be porcupines, but I did weld a piece across here as well, just reinforcement. Also, just like I tied this piece, drilled this in, this one's probably in 14 inches or so in the tire, and then welded those, and so that gives it support this way, because I'm going to be piling dirt right here, and so it's going to have weight pushing on it that way. Same with up there, it's going to have weight pushing it this way, so that's why I did that one like that. And yeah, good. So, and I just welded these directly to, I stopped like cleaning the metal just because it's just such a pain, and the welds are going to be strong enough for what this is going to be. Now this down here, still wiggly. I'm still trying to decide if I need to cut this right here in case there's some frost heave out here. That way it can kind of move independently if the soil dries or gets wet and compacts or expands some. That way this lower part will move. I'm not worried about this part moving because these tire bales are so wide. Underneath it's going to be, it's going to be a constant temperature. I don't think underneath these is going to be subject to frost heave at all. So that's a guess, but I'm kind of leaning on that. Okay, so trying to put metal lath, over the wood and then out over the tire bales. It looks nice and flat there where it's just over the wood and over the frame, but once it leaves this post right here, it gets over tire bales. It's real irregular. So, and you can see just looking down at how, but that's tire bales, right? That's the asking price. So I think what I'm going to do on the other side is use hardy backer board and just hardy backer the same angle coming off up by the top of the greenhouse, tapering down about the same angle, so we have the same wing wall on both sides. And then that'll be flat. And then I'll just screw metal lath to the hardy backer. And then that'll make it easier putting cement plaster on, so you don't have these big gaps behind where the tire bale dips are, and then all your cement falls out behind, so you waste a lot of cement. So that'll help a little bit. It'll cost a little more in hardy backer, but I think it'll go a whole lot faster than trying to fill all the holes behind these tire bales, fill all the gaps. It's a pain. So, and it's never effective enough. You think it will be, and it's just not. So at least that's been my experience on the inside, and now on the outside again. So as far as out here goes, I just put an extra cap on right here. So I wet the dry cement down, just used regular cement. I forgot to use fibers in this. My structural fibers that I've been using, basalt structural concrete fibers, and throw it in and mix it in so it makes it a lot more solid, although this has been this way for over a month and it hasn't broken off yet. So basically the concrete cap comes up and over like that. The plastic only lays up halfway, so I ran plastic down the top edge, right down the middle, and then put this cap on. So the concrete's actually holding half the concrete's holding the plastic, the other half over here is attached to the concrete, okay? And it's holding up well so far. It's cracking in places, but it's holding up okay. What we did was, I laid this plastic over like this, then we've just folded it back over. We took 20 by 100 6mm plastic, and the 20 feet goes from there down to here, and so we just unrolled it out here, and then pulled the edges up, tucked them up underneath that metal 4 or 5 inches. It's nice and tight up there. Use these little boards just to hold them in place. Those boards won't be necessary once we get dirt piled up that high. And then we folded this white plastic back over it. I've got some bricks, some pieces of rock and concrete blocks and tires, just holding it down. Now I'm going to go get the tractor now and start burying it. We'll see what that looks like. I'm not going to get it all buried, but I do want to bury it enough that it's anchored. So I'd like to bury up at least that high right there. And where that is, and get that buried, and maybe get some dirt along this edge just so I don't have to worry about that. Maybe get some dirt piled up right there on that edge, and then pile it around the edges. Even if I don't get the middles covered, that's okay, as long as I get the edges covered. That'll hold it down then better than these tires and bricks will. And get this front edge covered here, and then I can start filling in later. Okay, that's my plan. Hopefully it'll work out. But I'd like to go ahead and get the edges done. That way I'm not under a lot of pressure to, if the wind does start blowing, I'm not worried about the plastic blowing up and ripping off and flying away and all my work going down the toilet. So, okay, good. Then the plan will be for the back side of the greenhouse. We extended it past the wall there. You can see the back of the wall right there. We extended this piece past here. That'll give us some overlap. That way when we bring the other piece 20 by 100, well, 20 feet from here to here anyway, we're going to unroll it like that. And so it'll be, I'm going to overlap it this way as well, starting down here, come up, tuck it up underneath that edge. I'll have to cut holes obviously for the water tanks, and then go ahead and bring it down that other side. And then it'll come out 20 feet out this way. And that'll just be an extra water barrier that'll help protect the foundation, keep it ever from getting wet or moist or moving on me, and hopefully keep the structure lasting a lot longer. So this will be double 6mm plastic all the way around the greenhouse already. So we already have double 6mm plastic right there. So that's already on the outside of the tire bales, wood, styrofoam, right, 2-inch rigid insulation, and then 2 layers of 6mm plastic coming down and then coming out, you know, a couple feet. I forget how many feet it was. So we have that all the way around the whole greenhouse. So this, what we're doing right here, is just extra. This is just extra, not insulation. It's just to keep the moisture that does run off the roof here, does run off the back. And once we start capturing water, that'll be very little, but it'll keep the moisture, any moisture that does run off or overflow, from going down the back side right here and ending up down close to the foundation, which I don't think is going to be a lot, but that dirt down there stays wet for a long time. So let's just walk up here and see on the back of the berm here. So now we're up on the roof, of course, or by the roof. There's the tanks just to orient you. Of course, we're looking down the west side of the greenhouse here, but see that big gap right there? So that's just forming from water flowing off the roof, going down in here, and then it's not going out that way because I have a big berm right there. So it's going down behind the greenhouse. It's trying to go that way, of course, but it's going underneath as well. We're getting some moisture inside. So once we get this back part of the plastic covered, of course, if I had the gutters on, it would almost be a moot point. But once we get this back plastic on, it'll solve that problem as well. Okay, and then so not much rain is falling right here and rolling off this, because whatever falls here comes off here and goes down the back. So whatever's falling right here rolls off this and goes down here, and it's going down between those tire bales and right down in that hole right there, and that's going underneath into the greenhouse as well. Now that dries out really quickly, but I'd rather have the least moisture as possible. Now, is this more moisture than what normally fell on this ground when it was hard concrete before I even put these tire bales on here? Absolutely not. This is a lot less moisture than this ground's ever seen, but I still want to keep it as dry as possible. So